Everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing the 920 support tier list. So, as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Check out the rest of our offerings as well. We do lots of tier lists, patch notes, individual guides, topical guides, coaching playlists, just all kinds of stuff. And we stream every night starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, come by, check it out. I'm very conversational. I try to talk about anything league related or off-topic stuff that you want to talk about. Just come on by. We have a great community. We'd love to have you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. And as always, you can find a copy of this Google Doc I'm going to be referencing in the description as well. And within each one of those, or within the Google Doc, with each one of the top 15 picks, and I have a little mini Google Doc for those with a link to the wikis. You can learn about the abilities and the stats of the champion, a rating system 1 to 5, 1 being the champion is one of the worst at that task for the support role, and 5 being the champion is one of the best. So lane pressures, how likely can they get priority and exert their will on the lane? Kill threat, how likely can they get kills? Safety, how safe are they, particularly from early game ganks? Scaling is how well does the champion perform over time? Then reliability is how likely is it that you can perform well on this champion with practice over a long period of time. So part of that is how difficult is the champion to play in terms of skill shots and decisions. But another part is how well does the champion fit into the meta overall right now. Are there a lot of counter picks, that type of thing. Then I've got recommended runes and recommended items. Although, as always, keep in mind some of this stuff can be situational. So take that with a grain of salt, and I'll explain what that means when we get to each champion. Okay, and I also have timestamps. You can jump around your favorite parts as well if you don't want to watch the whole thing. Okay, let's talk about the meta overview. Not that much has changed in the meta, although I think my outlook on the meta has changed in the last couple of videos. And I've been watching some other kind of instructional guides about support and things like that from like Skill Capped. Just released one that was pretty cool, pretty interesting. But one thing that I've come to realize is that you have to be able to roam and rotate and just sit middle. And I've changed my position on that a little bit from the past because I think the meta is so extreme right now. I think the bot lane is so bad overall that you just have to do that. So it's risky. Every time you leave your lane, you risk your AD carry dying. You risk your AD carry raging out and just AFKing out of the game. You're losing experience whenever you rotate. It's dangerous to rotate because you could get caught out in the river. There's all kinds of bad things that can happen. But there's a couple of things that I sort of underestimated that are really important right now as well in terms of meta. Number one is you have to figure out some way to stop the enemy team from coming down and camping your bot lane, because that happens so often. The smart junglers will just sit bottom the entire game, and if the mid lane gets control, if they start beating up your mid laner, then they're going to rotate down and they're going to sit bottom too. So you're going to have 4 people sitting bottom, and you're not going to be able to farm anyways. Your AD carry is not going to be able to farm. And most likely, you're going to die at some point. Either you're going to overextend and get caught, or they're just going to straight dive you, 4v2 at your tower. Because there's so many tanky type of dive champions that can get you, like Leona, Nautilus, Blitz. Like, there's a lot of champs that can just, kill you early on. Because the map is really lopsided. Like, bot lane is the best place to go most of the time to camp. And I know it's ironic because I just said that bot lane is, like, ridiculously weak right now. But the thing is, junglers and mid laners are just so much stronger than bot laners most of the time. They're going to be higher levels, and typically they're playing champions that either have really high burst or CC or mobility, and a lot of times all three early on. And those are 3 things that a lot of AD carries don't have. Most AD carries don't have a lot of damage early game. They require multiple items. Most of them do not have a lot of CC, and many of them have very limited escapes. They've, a lot of them have something, but it's not a lot. And so it's just going to be a lot weaker, and it's just a numbers game. If you have, your jungler joins their 2 bot laners, then it's 3v2 bot, or if the mid laner comes down, then it's 4v2 bottom. And you get so many, good rewards. You get multiple kills. If you get to play bot lane, so that's 2 kills. You get tower plates. You get dragons, which are really strong right now. So just everyone that's, smart is going to be camping bot lane most of the time. There are a couple of circumstances where maybe you want to camp top, right? Like, if you have a Riven that's a one-trick that's really good, maybe you go top. But, Rift doesn't come online until 10 minutes. It takes a lot longer to kill than Dragon. And if you do get a kill top lane, all you're going to get is 1 kill out of it, maybe. Like, you're still going to be able to get some plates, like maybe a plate, but the rewards are far lower than they are in the bot lane. So how do you combat this? Well, I had been trying just to play something that's safe, that can play for the mid game, like Rakan, and just assume, okay, my AD carry is going to feed. I'm just going to do everything I can, play for the mid game, and roam around. But the problem is sometimes that's too late. Like, the damage is already done. You already have, their mid laner is like 5-0 at this point, and your bot laner's down like 40 CS, and they're 0-3. And sometimes it's just too late to turn that around. So I think you just need to double down on just roaming and just sitting middle. And yes, your AD carry is probably going to get out farmed. They might die, but they're going to do that anyways, either on their own, just from goofing up, or from the enemy jungler just camping bottom. So whenever you go mid and you just keep applying a ton of pressure in the mid lane, what happens is your mid's going to gain an advantage. So then your mid is going to be able to roam. So after you get a kill, or at least just put up some threat and push the mid lane in, then your mid laner and you can go rotate back bottom. And especially at like platinum and lower, that bot lane is going to want to punish hard for you going middle. So they're going to overcompensate and try to go really hard on your AD carry typically, and they're going to overextend. So then you can wrap around with your mid laner, and then all of a sudden you get the 3v2 bot lane. And if your jungler's in the area, he can come down too. So that's something that I've noticed. And it also gives you the ability to ward up their jungle while you're doing that. So that you know where the jungler is, right? And the best place to put it, if you're on top side, is just to put it on there. Raptors, red, and golems. If you're on the bottom side, it's just to put it like around their blue, and then to put it over the blue wall, like at that little intersection near the bushes. And so that'll give you eyes on their jungler. It'll make sure that you're probably not going to lose the mid lane as much. Your bot lane might fall behind a little bit more, but let's be honest, that's going to happen anyways. And if they overextend, then you can swoop down and get the kill. So that's one thing that I've really realized right now, is you have to do something desperate like that. If in like the very worst case scenario, it puts their mid laner a little bit behind, so it's harder for them to roam bottom. And in many cases, it'll serve as like a magnet to pull their jungler towards the mid lane, and the enemy support will also be pulled towards mid lane as well. And so then it'll just be a 1v1 at 80 carries at the bot lane. But now you've got the first step, right? You're able to make the first move, and if you just are better at vision, if you're better at rotating, if you're just playing a champion that rotates better and that operates in that Clown Fiesta skirmish better, then you're going to have a major advantage. So that's what I think you just have to do to try to take control of the game, is just say whatever bot lane. I'm not talking like 100% abandon it all the time, but just put a much, much higher premium on trying to sit mid lane or invade the enemy jungle if your jungler's on board with that. Just doing something to stop them from just camping bottom the whole time. You have to be the one to be the aggressor. So that's something that I've been trying out over the last couple of days and working on. I haven't historically been amazing on champions like Pyke, but I'm trying to learn it. I'm trying to get a little bit better at it, and I'm seeing some pretty good results. I'm feeling a little bit better every game about it, and I just think it's just really good right now. So anyways, so the meta overview, everyone's camping bottom, like I just said. There's also, it's just early, like people are just playing stuff that's terrible in the early games. They're like doubling down on the victim status in bot lane by going like tier Ezreal, tier Kai'Sa, or things like Vayne in the bot lane. Those are like, I'm pretty sure those are the most popular picks right now. Caitlyn is coming up there. The thing about Caitlyn is she should be aggressive. She should be able to make plays, but realistically, a lot of people are just not that great on Caitlyn. They're not going to play her aggressively. Now, Lucian is pretty good early game, and Ashe is all right. So Vayne has fallen down in priority a little bit, which thank God people are picking her a little bit less. But still, your most popular ones by a pretty large margin are still going to be Ezreal and Kai'Sa. So, and those champions also can't punish your AD carry as much. When you're roaming mid as Pyke and you've got something like an Ashe and they have an Ezreal, like they're not going to punish you that hard for the roam. And also with that, it's hard to get kills with these champions. Like when they're getting tier, if you're trying to play for lane, if you're playing like Nautilus in your lane and you're just sitting in your lane trying to get kills, it's not happening. Like you're just wasting your early game potential because they're going to get their little tier of the goddess and just sit there and watch you whenever you engage and not do anything. So I just think that it's an extremely bad meta for AD carries right now, and I think that's exacerbated by the types of AD carries people are picking. They just take too many items, too much time. They don't come online until 20 minutes, with a couple of exceptions. Lucian can do a lot of damage early. Ashe has her arrow, but a lot of these champions just are not going to be that great in the early game. You're also seeing a lot of double assassin comps. So that means that the lanes are very swingy, which I've described in the past, to where if one of those assassins gets really far ahead, then they just totally steamroll the game because the other assassin's worthless. Because assassins usually don't have much CC. They just don't have a lot of utility. They're just all damage. And so if they can't win a 1v1 against the enemy assassin, they're going to lose. So if you've got your mid lane, Akali versus Zed or something like that, and you're able to put your thumb on the scale by sitting middle, then you're not only helping your champion get ahead, you're basically deleting their champion from the game by doing that. And that's worth it. I mean, even if your Caitlyn goes 0-3 bot lane and is down 20 CS, totally worth it if you get your Zed 2 kills and your Zed's up 20 CS in the mid lane, because then Zed can start roaming and help you out bottom. So yeah, the double assassin comps it's a very volatile meta, and so you need to have huge influence as early as possible. Then hard engage supports are still going to be the best right now, and that's what most people have been playing. I just think that shifting more towards roaming, and like I said, I know this is sort of a change of mentality because I do roam, but just not as much as I'm recommending now, because I used to think it was too risky bottom, where now I realize it's too risky not to roam, because the bottom just doesn't matter for the first 20 minutes of the game, honestly, a lot of the time. And the game's won by mid lane and jungler, I think, right now, or like a support that has a really good engage. Okay, at least the early to mid game, and that's when a lot of games are decided. All right, so Pyke. Pyke's going to be, Pyke's the king of this, I think, if you can get good with him. Now, I will preface this by saying that Pyke is banned a lot, so he's still the second most banned champion. However, people are banning Blitzcrank a lot more now. People are banning Garen. So there are a lot of other champions that are getting banned. So Pyke does sneak through sometimes. And the thing about Pyke that's so good is he's just like the king of roam for several reasons. So he obviously can do a lot of damage, especially level 6 with his ult. So that's really handy. I'll pull it up over here so we can kind of double screen this. But he roams super well. He's got invisibility, so he gets around wards really well, both when he's roaming and he can ward deep in the enemy jungler. He's one of the best warders in the game because he can ward while he's still invisible. And if they do happen to catch you out, you can usually use your E to run away. He also has really high base health in the early game at 600. Now he can't get any more health, but that's still a really nice base stat. He's very resilient to poke because of his gray skin effect, the gift of the drowned ones. And he has a surprisingly low cooldown and a low mana cost on his hook. So it's only 70 mana at all ranks compared to like a Blitzcrank is like 100 mana, and it's only 12 seconds at level 1, whereas like Blitz hook, Thresh hook, all those things are 20 seconds. So he's pretty good with that. And then obviously he just moves around really fast. Not only is he invisible, but he starts moving really, really quickly around the map. And he's got the sun from Phantom Undertow. So he just has a ton of mobility, a ton of kill threat with his Bone Skewer. He snowballs super hard off of Death from Below. And the items that he gets, yes, they're like really nice damage and efficient, but they just are like pretty solid items in general. They give you a lot of, for a support, they give you a lot of out of combat movement speed. Ghostblade gives you another like escape or engage. Dustblade is basically a second sweeper in addition to all the extra damage that it does. So he's just got really good itemization. Huge snowball potential, great engage, great escapes. He's just really solid if you do well on him. So yeah, if you don't get a ton of kills, he can fall a bit behind, but just the fact that you can run around so well and just like get around the map, get really good vision control, is still going to make him strong even if you don't get a ton of kills early on. Like I was playing some Pyke games, I was just missing a ton of hooks in a lot of the game, and we still ended up winning just because I was able to put so much pressure on the map. So yeah, pretty strong. He can be an aftershock abuser as well. So whenever you hook somebody in for the first time, you're going to block a lot of that damage. Demolish whenever you're roaming around, making those plays. Even if you run them out of lane and just take a plate, sometimes that's still going to be really good. It's 160 gold in your pocket. Well, split with the 80 carry or whomever. And then you have Bone Plating. He's a Presence of Mind abuser, which you'll see that a lot. So that's anyone that has a very strong ultimate that, is very good at making plays. So he's awesome with Presence of Mind. And then just mobility boots. Just who uses mobility boots really well? He's one of them because of the invisibility, the speed up, and the Phantom Undertow. It just gives him just, insane roaming around the map. Now, I have been actually switching over to Nomad's Medallion, which I know there was someone on stream that was wanting me to go coin Pyke. And I had always thought, you know, I need to go Relic Shield, and I was thinking of the lane. I was like, okay, I need a little bit more AD. You know, the health regen in the lane matters. All that kind of stuff. But in reality, it doesn't. Like, it doesn't really matter because you're not going to be in the lane most of the time. You're just going to be roaming around trying to make plays. And Nomads gives you the fastest wards most of the time. You don't have to worry about having to fight over cannon minions, you know, risking your life to go try to get the last hit on that cannon minion because, especially like gold and higher, they know you want that cannon minion. And Nomad gives you the 10 extra movement speed. You get your wards the fastest, which the movement speed is very, very relevant. And most importantly, it gives you that 10% CDR as well at tier 2. So you don't have to waste any more gold getting to tier 3. When you do the Relic Shield line, you have to go to a tier 3 ward item, which is going to be an additional, like, I don't remember how much. I think it's 950 total gold over the tier 2. That's almost a Dirk that you could have had instead, you know, to get the 10% CDR. And yes, getting the 4th ward is very nice, but you can also do that cheaper with Nomads if you want. You can pay the 650 to do that. So I would rather get coin. I just think it gives you a lot more gold, gives you that movement speed for roaming even faster, and gives you the 10% CDR so that you can go and try to make plays more often. So I think that Nomad is probably where I would be right now. And the health regen doesn't matter because you have, like, I mean, it's okay, but they've nerfed it so many times. It's not a lot of regen, and you already have a lot of innate regen with your Gift of the Drowned One. So I think if you're looking for somebody to try to master that's going to be really good in this meta, I think Pyke's good. And yeah, he has been good for quite a while. It's just, I think, especially if you're trying this style of just the sit on mid lane style of play, then he's going to be one of the best at it. Okay. So Pyke, going to be very strong. He's going to be banned a lot, but if he's available, get him. Nautilus is another one. And, you know, just as far as the major shift, like, I had a bunch of enchanters up here because I thought that the scaling was going to be more important and you could just outscale. And then I thought that tanks were going to come back a little bit more on the last patch. We are seeing Mundo, you know, popping around, but it's still double assassin most of the time. And like I said, I just realized that just bot lane is just going to get camped and just murdered if you sit there. You have to be on the move. You have to force them to go do something else other than sit 4 people bottom. So that's why there's kind of been this paradigm shift here. All right, Nautilus is another one who's been very good for a while. I haven't been playing him, and the big thing is, like, I was thinking he's so risky bottom because you're going to get camped, 3- and 4-man camped. So I was just thinking defensively, well, what do I do? Kind of like a victim mentality, like, I'm going to get camped bottom. How do I try to win? And I was playing Rakan, and Rakan is very good at that, but you're just really taking the game out of your hands. You're just allowing them to bully you around and allowing them to dictate the pace. Well, with Nautilus, though, if you're the one doing the roaming, if you're the one making those plays, then it's not as dangerous as it is in the bot lane to play those types of champions like Nautilus, like Leona. So Nautilus I really like because a big part of his kit is it's so guaranteed. You know, whenever you show up and you just press R on somebody, like, they're dead. You know, there's no fancy crap they can do. They're not going to flash it. They're not going to dash around it. You can't miss it. It's just going to hit them. It's also very, very good in team fights because it can knock up multiple people. So if it does come to a team fight, which occasionally happens in this meta, then Death Charge is really good. It's only 120 seconds as well. So pretty low cooldown on that. And then, you know, he's just really good at roaming around. He has a really fat hitbox on his dredge line, so open field hooks are going to be a lot easier with him than other champions. He pushes really well, so after you get kills or after you force them back, you can push the wave really quickly with Riptide and run and go do something else. So he's got a lot of potential there. He is going to be a little bit squishier than some of the other champs. Titan's Wrath is okay, but it's not nearly as good defensively as something like Leona's W, and he doesn't have any sustain in the lane like Pyke. So there's that. Now, and his itemization is okay. But yeah, I would go mobility boots. I mean, I just go mobility boots on pretty much everybody. Like, you need to roam around a lot in this meta right now. And mobility boots are indirectly a huge boost to your experience because while you're rotating around, you're losing experience in lanes. So the closer you can get to the lanes more often, the more likely it is that you're going to gain a lot more experience. So It's just the combination of he has so much CC, like every single ability except for Titan's Wrath. Has some CC, so he has 4 different CC abilities, including 3 like hard CC, stuns or roots. So I think he's really good, and it's just that guaranteed knockup that's AoE, great in team fights, great for individual kills. It's just hard to beat it, and the fact that he has the wave clear with Riptide. Those are the 2 things I think that set him apart from some of these other hard engaged champs. He can also get around the map a little bit faster with Dredgeline too. Like, you don't have to do that, but you can hook walls. And once you get some CDR, it only goes on like a 3-second CD, so then you can get around the map a little bit faster. Now, he doesn't have escapes like Pyke does, so that's kind of an issue. It's harder to go into their jungle and deep ward, because if you get caught out, you're probably going to die. But nevertheless, he has much more reliable, guaranteed, hard engage, they're going to die than Pyke does because of that ult. So I think that's just kind of a change of taste that can be... or change of pace there, I guess, that could be really good for him. And then I'd just go something like Zeke's Knight's Vow, kind of standard fare. You can go Locket. They did buff Locket, but people still aren't team fighting that much. Like, it's rare to have a full-on 5v5 team fight. It happens, but usually it's just skirmishing. Someone is walking through vision, and they get caught out, killed, and then it just snowballs from there. So, anyways, he's still going to be really good. One of the better hard engaged tanks, so highly recommend trying out Nautilus if you're interested in him. Now, Blitzcrank is the other talk of the town. He has been up quite a bit in terms of win rate right now. So Nautilus is still pretty high. But Blitzcrank actually went up a lot more than I thought he would. He's at 53% right now. Now, he's banned a lot too. Kind of like Pyke. Why is... Okay. But yeah, let's go ahead and pull him up real quick. But that extra range on his hook actually did mean quite a lot. I didn't think, I was like, okay, 100 range, it's not going to matter that much. But it really does. Like, you can catch people off guard. They're not used to it. And the thing that separates Blitz from some of these other ones is he has the highest amount of burst damage than any of the other, like, hook engage supports. I think even more. I mean, if Pyke gets really fed, maybe Pyke has a bit more. But it's a lot. I mean, the base damage on this is 300 with a 100% AP ratio. So that's a ton. And then Overdrive, kind of like Pyke, just allows him to run around the map really quickly. Now, it does slow you down a little bit, after it wears off. But nevertheless, it's still pretty good. And then the Power Fist is a nice little stunt or like knock up. It's not that great. It's 1 second, but it's a little bit extra. But then the Static Field Detonation is also 100% AP with a 250 there. So... I haven't tried an AP version of him. I'm not really sure what that would look like. I could see maybe like Proto Belt if you really want to try for it. It would give you some extra burst, or you could even try maybe Hextech GLP. That would that'd be a nice little slow to pretty much guarantee you're going to hit that rocket grab. I've never tried that, but that would be interesting because he does have such good AP ratios, and he does like mana, so he can hook more. He likes CDR. I haven't tried it. I haven't seen a lot of other people doing it, but it's possible. You could go for a GLP early on. Frankly, the Zeke's just doesn't really matter because you don't need to be that tanky with him, because usually either you hit the hook and they're dead, or you don't hit the hook and you just hang out like, 1,000 range away from people. So maybe that's what it should be. I haven't tried it out. I'll have to try it out. Maybe I'll try that out tonight. We'll see. So come by the stream if you want to check it out. Yeah, GLP might be interesting. People are doing that on Shaco support, which I'll mention here in a little bit. That's kind of my spicy pick of the week. But yeah, he's good. Now, they also did change around his ult to where it removes shields first, and then it applies the detonation damage. So I'm not sure. I think if you grab somebody and then knock them up, and it triggers Sterix, it'll remove the Sterix shield and then do a lot of the damage to him. So that's a lot of damage. I mean, deleting the Sterix is usually like 500 or 600 shield. So that effectively takes this up to almost like 1,000 damage if you're deleting Sterix. Other things that have big shields, like Echo gets a pretty big shield. Obviously, Janna throws out big shields. So yeah, anything that creates a shield. Barrier, if anyone has barrier. So... that's given him a lot more power, and he just has a lot of burst. I mean, he's just the king of burst. He lands that hook, it's dead, and it's the best hook because it's really fast, has a large hitbox, and it just does a ton of damage. So Blitzcrank is the full-on 100% offense, but he doesn't have any other utility. He doesn't have the reliable CC of Nautilus. He doesn't have the resets of Pyke or the mobility or invisibility. But if you land those hooks, you can totally take over the game with that. A lot of people have been going Righteous Glory on him, which is a similar effect where you can kind of run people down. It makes you a little tankier. But you have to get in close to slow him and then go for the hook. I'm legit thinking about that GLP because GLP is about the same price as Righteous Glory. But it would give you a lot more burst and CDR and mana and a range slow. So maybe that's worth. Anyways, yeah, try him out. Just Aftershock, Demolish, Bone Plating, Unflinching. I guess if you're trying to be really spicy, you could go for something like Electrocute. But that's probably a little hardcore. I mean, Electrocute, Cheap Shot. I mean, Relentless Hunter would give you even more speed. You could try it, but nobody really does that. It's usually just a lot of Aftershock. But, I mean, hell, maybe they should. I don't know. It probably depends on what you're against in the laning phase. If you're against something like Janna, maybe you could do that. But if you're against another all-in support, maybe not. But yeah, just mobility boots, nomads, and just run around. Once again, you will see some people doing Relic Shield. I like nomads because you get that 10% CDR much faster, you get your wards faster, and it gives you the movement speed, which is probably one of the most important stats for a roamer like that. Okay. Leona is going to be up here a little bit more as well. Now, some of the unique qualities of Leona, first of all, she's very, very good against like damage over time stuff. So like Zyra, anything that does like Scorch damage, like Malzahar minions, just anything that's going to be proccing damage over time, even just like weak auto attacks in lane. Airy, she's very good against these things because they changed it to where it's like a flat damage reduction up to 50%, I think. So it's a flat reduction of, in early levels, like 12 or something like that. Resistances up to 50% reduction. So, you know, when you're getting hit by like Airy or whatever, or Scorch, if Scorch was going to do 20 to you, it only does 10. You know, Airy would only do like 8 damage to you, and then Zyra plants that would normally be hitting you for like 30 are going to be hitting you for like 15. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but when there's a lot of stuff like that hitting you, Leona takes reduced pre-mitigation damage from... Also, just realized this would apply to minions. I didn't think about that before. But yeah, if you engage in the middle of a minion wave, like those minions actually beat you down pretty hard. But this would reduce their damage by 50%. So if you have like 6 minions beating on you, which I don't recommend engaging into 6 minions, but sometimes, you know, it is what it is. Or they start attacking you in the minion wave and you got to hit them back. I mean, that's a lot of reduced damage from the minions. So, yeah, that's solid. And then she still gets armor and magic resist. Now, she can engage through the minion wave, which is something that those other previous champions I just mentioned can't. So her E is always available through any minion wave anytime. Her solar flare can go through anything. So she just doesn't care as much about that type of positioning. Now, the range on this is shorter than the hooks. It's only 875, whereas most of the hooks are about 1,000. So that's something to keep in mind. But she also has a really short cooldown on her stun. It's 5 seconds now. They've buffed it several times. And so you can get this stun off reliably several times in a fight. And when you get your E leveled up as well, that can go all the way down to 6 seconds. So you have a lot of uptime, a lot of CC. Nautilus has good CC too, but this is like a lot in a sustained fight, which is good. And her ult is on an extremely short cooldown. It's 90 seconds early on, so that's a full 30 seconds less than most other champs. And it has really long range. I mean, 1,200 range is far. Nautilus's missile is, I think, 875 or 850 maybe. So this is like 50% bigger engage range. Now, they can flash or dash around it, but, you know, a lot of champions, if they've already used their flash or they don't have it, or you can bait their flash first, like you go in with Zenith Blade, stun them, and then they flash, and then you ult them, you know, it's a really good follow-up. And she does quite a bit of damage, too. I mean, these Sunlight procs definitely add up in the early game. She's one of the higher damage tanks in the early game. But really, it's just the fact that, you know, she has such a low cooldown on the solar flare. You can just go through and just keep making plays over and over and over again. and just wearing people out. So, yes, she is dangerous in lane if you get camped. But once again, if you're on the offense, if you're doing the warding, if you're the one that's, like, camping mid lane, then this can be very, very strong. I recommend, and I did this with Nautilus as well, I like Presence of Mind. A lot of people don't do that, but it's just like anything that has the capacity to have a huge engage off of their ult, I think Presence of Mind is definitely going to be worth. So I would get that, and then Legend Tenacity and Unflinching just means that CC isn't going to affect you as much either, so I think that's really handy. And then just Mobility Boots, Eye of the Aspect. I think with champions like Nautilus and Leona, you actually do need the health quite a bit. So I think you have to go Eye of the Aspect on them, although it kind of feels bad. I think Nomads is probably just sort of irresponsible, although I don't know. But the difference is, once again, they have to get in close. You know, they're going to be getting a hit back, so you probably need the health for that. And they don't have sustain. Versus, like, Blitzcrank, you know, you're either hitting your hook or not. You know, you're not going in most of the time if you're playing him correctly. Unless you know, like, it's going to be a winning fight. And then Pyke, of course, you have your own sustain, and you also don't have to go in if you don't want to after you hit your hook. So I still think that Eye of the Aspect is probably a necessity for them. And then just Zeke's Knight's Vow. Now, she has terrible AP ratios, I think. She's got like a 0.8 on her ult, so you don't want to do Glacial with her. You just want to do a standard Zeke's Knight's Vow Locket. And when you go in there with Zeke's, you can stick to him a little bit easier with the slow field too. So, yeah, very good. You know, her marquee thing, once again, that differentiates her from many of the other ones is she can engage through the wave anytime, anywhere, and she has a very low cooldown, fairly high range, hard engage ult, which is really, really good to leverage. So, yeah, Leona is going to be very strong. And then finally, in Tier 1, I have Rakan down here a little bit more. Now, I dropped Rakan a little bit just because he doesn't have as much damage in the early game. I think that he scales better than pretty much any of these, unless it's like maybe a hyper-fed Pyke. But he does have a lot of utility. You know, the W is nice, but the Q is just so worthless. I mean, that ability is just such junk in the laning phase. It does like a very marginal amount of damage, gives you a very small heal. It's hard to hit, has a slender hitbox. So the Q is just pretty bad. Now, the thing is, he is safe, right? Like, you can E and get away from people and things, but a lot of times your allies aren't going to be close enough to have you E. So if you're trying to go for, like, a particularly risky play, sometimes it's hard to get back out. Quickness is good. It does have a 130-second cooldown, which is on the long side for a lot of engage type of supports, but it is pretty solid. He does offer protection, you know, against assassins for your AD carry or for other people, so that is really handy. Although, once again, AD carry really doesn't matter that much. I know AD carries aren't going to like to hear that, but they can probably agree that in a lot of games, it feels like it's the mid lane and the jungler that are dictating a lot of the games. So it is nice. He does have a lot of mobility. It's great to follow up and make plays with Grand Entrance. But yeah, the E obviously doesn't do any damage. Your Q really, especially if you just put 1 point in it, doesn't do a lot of damage. And this damage is like okay, but you don't typically build a lot of AP on him either. You can go with Thenes, but a lot of times it's still going to be Zeke's. So I think he is still really good. If you do have a quality AD carry, you know, you check them on op.gg or whatever, Porofessor, they look solid, or they're Zyra or something, you know, he can still be really good. Or you just need some more scaling, you know, that you think the game's going to go a bit longer, and you just want kind of the scaling off of Battle Dance, because this is like undercover, probably the best shield in the game, or pretty close. I mean, it's a 1.6 AP ratio with a 280 base. If you like fully make perfect use of of each one of the components, so it can be solid. He is still one of the best anti-assassins because he has you know, Guardian plus all of these shields, so he just like really stuffs things like Zed. So if you need something a bit more defensive, but you still want to roam and make plays, he's good. It's just he's going to have a little bit less damage. Thank you so much, Carlos. I appreciate it.
It's Dark Elf time.
Thank you. But yeah, so he's still going to be pretty solid. And I would just go Nomads, Mobies. Now, some people do go spell thieves, but I really don't recommend that unless you're like challenger, where every single point of damage matters. Because your AD carry, like I said, you just can't count on them to do a lot of stuff, and it's just too dangerous for you to go in by yourself to proc those spell thieves in lane. So I would just go nomads. It gives you the now Frostfang does give you CDR at the second tier, which is good, and he does have really good AP ratios, but you're just going to lose out on a lot of gold, and a lot of times your wards are going to be 3 or 4 minutes later than they would normally be if you have nomads. And in the mid to late game, you're going to be down like 500 gold. So I would just rather go nomads. I think it's just a lot more reliable. But yeah, Rakan's still going to be good, but not quite as good kind of in that early game at creating as much pressure as some of those other picks. But still, nevertheless, going to be really strong. Okay. Janna is one that I kind of have in here, and these are, when we start to get into some alternatives to the hard engage champs. Janna's still going to be okay. She still has a pretty good win rate overall, and she is one of the better champs against a lot of these hard engage champs. Now, like Blitzcrank, not so much, because Blitz just pulls people and blows them up instantly, and you can't do a lot about that. But, things like Nautilus and Leona, like you have opportunities to outplay them and outscale them. So if you do have the higher scaling AD carry, if you have like a Jinx or a Twitch or something like that and you just want to protect him, Janna can be pretty good. She's not as good at roaming as some of the other ones. She is very fast though, so she gets a lot of speed off her W. You can roll up and throw a W at him and just auto attack and maybe tornado him, and maybe that's enough to turn a fight. You got a shield, so you can still definitely roam. It's just not going to be as brutal as some of these other options. And her CC is going to be a bit more limited than some of the other ones. She does have her Tornado, which is good for disruption, and her ultimate, but it's not proactive. You're reactive. You're waiting on them to make the play, and then you're countering it. So, like I said, if you have superior scaling on your team, you have the Jinx, you have the Azir, or something like that, maybe you can go for it. Now, she can punish people in lane if you go something like Comet Cheap Shot on her. You can punish people early with the W spam. It just kind of depends. Against something like an Ezreal or a Vayne or maybe even a Kai'Sa, you can do that in the wave if you just W them and then auto attack and then scale for later. So she is one of the best scaling champs if you have a really good team fight comp and you just need the peel. She can be really strong, but she's just not as proactive. You're going to be a little bit more beholden to your team if you do that. Now, I had been recommending Guardian, but I think you need to be more proactive. That's what I had tried last week, was sort of just the scale it up and protect against assassins. But I want to be more proactive here. Mana Flow, Transcendence, Scorch, and then I would probably let's go for something like Cheap Shot, Relentless Hunter. Now, once again, it depends. If you're going to lose the lane really hard, you can't go for this build. Maybe you can go for just Taste of Blood or something like that, plus Relentless Hunter. But I think this is one of the best sort of poke lanes, because her W does apply a slow, obviously, so the Comet's always going to hit him. And then your auto attack would apply Cheap Shot after you W him. So that's pretty good for steady trades on her. And then just Mobility Boots, Nomad's Medallion, Athene's gives you that extra bit of punch early with the AP, scales really well, and then Ardent and Redemption depending on what's going on with the situation. So yeah, Janna, still going to be a very good peeler type of support that can be aggressive early in the right kind of matchups. Okay, now Nami is going to be probably the most well-rounded, aggressive enchanters out there. And the reason is her damage and her heal are all on one ability. It's all on the W, so you just level up the W, just spam it on them every time it's off cooldown, sprinkle in an auto attack, and you'll just slowly whittle down the enemy lane. And if you ever do land a bubble, that's usually a pretty good chance to get a kill opportunity on him. The problem is, she doesn't roam that well. It's okay, kind of like Janna. You can slap some boots on her, run to mid lane, and just throw a W in there and a Tide Caller, and maybe make some plays, maybe get some a good outcome, but it's just not going to be as much CC and as reliable as some of the other champs. But she does still have good hard CC for an enchanter. She's got Aqua Prison. She does have Tidal Wave, so it's no Leona, it's no Nautilus, but it's more CC that you can kind of be proactive with than someone like Janna, although she doesn't scale as well as Janna. So It's pretty good overall. Certain matchups, like if you have Illusion on your team, the Tidecaller's Blessing is very good because each one of his double shots applies it. So you can get that damage out there a little bit faster, albeit like the damage is not super high to begin with, but it's something. But you're really just picking her because she's such a great lane bully. Get that priority, and then if you land that Aqua Prison, you know, while they're trying to go for that cannon minion, or you've got them last hitting under tower and they're focused on the minions, not watching for the bubble, you can potentially get some kills there. But beware, she is very vulnerable to assassins. You know, if Talon or Zed are just running at you, you don't have a lot of options, right? You can Tidal Wave, maybe you hit a Miracle Bubble if they don't flash it, but it's going to be a problem. Janna has a bit more protection because she's got her ult, which usually is enough to get you out of most things unless they're super fed. But Nami's still going to be quite strong. So I just go Airy, Mana Flow, Absolute Focus, Scorch, and Bone Plating and Revitalize, and then just Mobility Boots, Frostfang. It's really easy to trigger Frostfang with her because she can be so aggressive, but if it's going to be a hard losing lane, you could still do Nomads, and then it's your standard Athene, Ardent Censor, and Redemption. Okay, after that Bard. Now, I haven't tried Bard with kind of this new mentality, but he's someone who does quite a bit of early game damage, and he roams really well once he gets mobility boots because he gets extra speed off of his meeps, and of course he has his tunnel to come at people from weird angles and potentially get around wards. So he's just kind of an odd duck. Like, you have to play him a lot to fully understand him. You know, I'm not a mastermind Bard player myself, but I think they did lower the cooldown on his ult a while ago. Yeah, they took off like 20 seconds on it, I think. So that does allow you to make some good plays. Has really long engage range, 3,400. So he just has virtually no scaling. Though, like, he does have the scaling on the meeps a little bit, but his itemization is just really funky. I mean, hey, maybe GLP, get the slow on him, and then that will like guarantee that you hit your Tempered Fate, or that you're going to hit your Cosmic Binding. I think GLP is criminally underused by a lot of people because it's cheaper than Ludens. It does have a little bit less damage, but like those bolts and the slow can be really handy. So I think most people are still going to be taking... I don't have it up here. I mean, do.gg. I think it's still Electrocute is kind of the standard. But I have not played against Bard that much. And yeah, it looks like Electrocute kind of at the pedestrian level, at kind of the higher tier level, is still Electrocute. Yeah, I think I've seen a couple of like Halo Blades or like Guardian and stuff like that. I mean, more and more people are trying Halo Blades. I haven't tried that. I mean, that kind of makes sense because you get to unload your meeps for a lot more damage a lot faster. But Electrocute does quite a bit of damage too. Is I think each one of your meeps counts as a separate source of damage. Not 100%, don't quote me on that, but I know that he does proc Electrocute really quickly. So I believe, yeah, it's just like cheap shocks, you do apply a slow. Ghost Poro, remember Ghost Poro is basically 30 AP by like 15 minutes if you're using it correctly. So yeah, the ward is like whatever, but it's really because you get 30 AP at 15 minutes. Like that's why it's so good. And then you've got Ulti Hunter, which is nice for trying to make those plays around the map. I would not go Boots because I would want to get mobility boots ASAP. Yeah, I think like Biscuit's Cosmic's probably better. Why does he go Ingenious? I'm not sure what it... Maybe he was... it does give you a smaller cooldown on your sweeper, but if you're going Ingenious, I think you really like... That could be good with GLP. Of course, it's a 40-second cooldown anyway, so, you know, you probably don't need it. But I don't know. Not a lot of people are doing it. You know, a lot of people still go kind of the Redemption build. I think Athenes can be good. But, you know, maybe going something like GLP could be better. The problem is he just doesn't have good AP ratio, so it's... You know, it is what it is. He's just weird. Like, you have to get used to him. But he can apply a lot of pressure. Like I said, he roams around really quickly. His ult is great for making plays. You have to really practice it to get used to when to use it at the right time. I don't do it correctly at all because I hardly play him, but you know, you can do all sorts of things. Like obviously you can shut off towers, but like more advanced things is you can cut off like half of a team and leave half of them up. So if like a bunch of people are coming down a ramp, you know, you could stasis like 3 of them and then kill the other 2 while the first 2 are stasised. So I think there's a lot of potential there. If you hit this and you have like a Caitlyn on your team, in theory, she can drop a trap there, or Jinx can drop chompers or whatever and make a play. So he's got a lot of potential. He just requires a lot of practice, doesn't scale that well, but he does have quite a bit of early game damage especially. So I'd probably just go Electrocute, Cheap Shot. I would do Ghost Poro. I would take Relentless Hunter. I don't know why. I don't know what's up with that. But I would go with that. And then I guess you don't need Mana Flow or Absolute Focus, Transcendence. Yeah, I mean, I guess just Biscuits Cosmic. And then Frostfang. I would not upgrade Eye of the Watcher most of the time. Or Nomads. I mean, Nomads could be legit too. Once again, the 10 movement speed is definitely legit. And then Redemption Athenes, I guess. So yeah, Bard can be okay. You just have to get used to it. He's just like probably the best like AP roaming champion, or certainly one of the best. And then we have Zyra. Zyra can still be very strong. The issue with her is she just does not roam very well at all. She has very long cooldowns on her abilities. The E you have to hit. It's a skill shot. It's very slow moving. So it's just not great. It's very slender. So you really need to, like, she's best at peeling when people are coming into you. Now, she is very good at 2v2 lanes. But the problem is, if you're not proactive, if you're not roaming to other lanes and, like, shutting middle up so they don't come down there, they're going to come down. Middle's going to camp you. Jungler's going to camp you. And as soon as they smell blood in the water, as soon as they get a couple of kills on you and burn your flash, you better believe they're coming back down again. So, she can dominate 2v2s, but another issue, like I said before, is the popular 80 carries right now, the Pyke, or the Ezreal, the Kai'Sa, Vayne, that type of stuff is just not very good with her, because she's going to put up damage, but they're not going to be able to convert the kills. So she's way better in a meta that's more dominated by like Dravens and Jins, and those are still around, but they're just not quite as popular as some of the other ones. So yeah, I mean, she has really good vision control with Rampant Growth, really good team fighting with Stranglethorns, kind of like some of the other champions that we mentioned. You know, Grasping Roots and Q can go through minions, so you know you don't have to rely on positioning around sides of minions, which can be dangerous. So I just think that the fact that you can't really roam that well, and her items are very expensive too. You know, she needs to get Blasting Orb or Oblivion Orb, Blasting Wands, Oblivion Orb, Haunting Guys. You know, all this stuff is super expensive. So when you're paying like 3,100 gold to complete your Morellonomicon or your Leandres, you know, the enemy's completing Redemptions and Athenes and all that kind of stuff at like 2,100 gold. So she is very good. She did get some buffs fairly recently. I think they took 20 seconds off her ult. So that is pretty nice. But, you know, and she is good against dive, in theory. You know, things like Nautilus, things like Leona, she can do very well. The issue is you just can't roam. And so you're going to get camped. You're going to get murdered. That's at least been my experience in this patch. Now, if they dial back the roaming a little bit, if they nerf the jungle, they make it a bit slower, or they nerf wave clear middle or something a little bit more, I'm not really sure. But in the current meta, as it is, I just feel like you need to be able to roam, or you're just going to be a victim bot lane. But if you do get that alone time bot lane, you definitely can murder people. So I would just go Comet, Mana Flow, Absolute Focus, Scorch, and then Taste of Blood, Ulti Hunter. You could also do Relentless Hunter. That will help you roam a little bit more, or at least rotate a little bit more. And then another option would be something like Biscuits Cosmic Insight, if you want to do that. So yeah, I would go Sork Boots. Sometimes you'll see people go Mobility Boots, but I would just want to double down on the damage because your damage is so high. And then just Leandre's Rylai's. You can also do a, like I said, Oblivion Orb in there, especially if you're behind, where you just really want like a nice power spike. You can do that. But it does put you behind because you're not going to finish your Leandre's. And finished Leandre's is better than finished Morello, but finished Oblivion Orb is better than finished Haunting Guys, if that makes sense. So it just depends on when you want your power, immediately, or if you can afford to delay it for like another 7 minutes or so. Okay, so still going to be pretty good, but not as amazing in this meta. And then we also have Thresh. So Thresh, classic, you know, just really well-rounded champion, can roam really well. It's just the problem is everybody else has all these new toys. They have all this stuff that's really good. as far as items, runes, that type of stuff. And Thresh just doesn't have it. His itemization is terrible. His runes are terrible. His kit is still really good, but also just doesn't scale like that well. I guess I can just pull it over here. It's probably easier to do that, huh? So that's really the issue with Thresh. Yes, classically, he's really good. They did buff his death sentence a while ago, and then they took it back. But it's nice. The problem is, like, it's on a long cooldown early. It's 20 seconds. If you do hit it, then it does lower the cooldown a little bit. So late game, when this is maxed out, it's like rank 12, and you've got a lot of CDR. Yes, his hook is up, like, all the time in late game team fights. So that's good, as long as you're hitting it on people. But it's got a half a second delay on it. It's got a pretty slender hitbox. People are very used to that animation most of the time, so it's one of the more difficult hooks to hit. And so it's like, it's okay. You don't have to take it, which is nice. So you can just hit it for like basically a ranged 1.5 second stun. So that's good. Dark Passage is very useful. It's got a lot of utility to it. You can save allies, but you can also throw it to your own allies, like, and go aggressive with it as well. The problem is people have to click on it. So I'm sure we've all been there where people just don't click on the lantern, or you're just going to make a flashy, cool play. You land your hook over a wall, you throw your Dark Passage, you're like, boom, let's do this. And you go over it, and then like your 80 carry's just sitting there, and then, the person you just hooked solos you. So I think that he gets a lot better at higher elo, where people actually know how to play around him. They'll follow up, they'll take your lantern, because a lot of that is just wasted, I think, at Platinum and lower. So yeah, it has a lot of potential. It's a really cool ability. I think he's probably the best design support of all time. It's just so much fun. Like, there's a lot of interaction with him. It's pretty solid. And then his Flay, of course, is very good. It's great at peeling. It's great at offense. It's deceptively one of the hardest skill shots in the game, though, because it's so quick, and you have to put your mouse like at this weird angle sort of behind you in order to flay him correctly. And if you do it just slightly off, then it just looks terrible. And it's really close range. So, like, you're going to make yourself very vulnerable by trying to go for flays. Like, the worst feeling in the world is going for a flash flay and then, like, miscalculating it, missing your flay. So he just takes a lot of practice. It is really fun to gather up the souls and things like that. And the box is just, like, really weak, in 2019. It used to be a lot better back in the day, but it's only 250 damage, which is okay, but not nearly as good as some of the other options out there. It's very, very close range. It's 140 seconds, which I don't know why it's that high, because it's one of the weaker ults. I really wish they'd lower it to like 120 seconds. But it's just pretty weak compared to things like Leona's ult, Nautilus's ult, Pyke's ult. All those champs are just going to have much higher impact a lot of the time. So he's all right. He's well-rounded. The thing about him is, he has really good defense as well as offense. So he can be like your Janna, peeling for 80 carry if you need for him to be, or he can be kind of like a Nautilus where he can go in and try to CC a bunch of people. His problem is all he has is his death sentence as his hard CC. Your Flay, sort of, it can disrupt movement, but it's not going to like hard CC people for very long. It just kind of slows him for a little bit. So, and he has a slow on his box, but that's not hard CC. The thing is, so many champions right now have a lot of dashes. So, yeah, if you hit them with the slow, that's good, but they're still just going to dash and get to their target anyways. So, he's okay. He has low base stats. He doesn't have sustain. His skill shots are relatively hard to hit with Death Sentence and then Flay being kind of awkward as far as, like, mouse positioning. So, you just have to be really, really good and really well practiced on him. And I just feel like when you're playing him, you're just having to play so much harder and just, like, outplay the hell out of everybody in order to win. Versus something like Nautilus, you just walk up and press R in a team fight and you probably just won. A lot of times, or like Pyke, you can just run around invisible and just keep chucking, hooks until eventually you hit somebody and they die, and then you just ult everybody and, ace the team fight. So, he's okay. I just think that he's just a lot less reliable, and his numbers just aren't there in the same way they used to be in the past. So, like I said, the things I would like to see them change about it are lower the cooldown on the hook. They already did that once. Or maybe if they don't want to give a full lower, like maybe if you land the hook, it's another second off or something. But I would just like to see more uptime on some of these abilities. I mean, Dark Passage also, they've buffed that a little bit, but this should be like 16 seconds down to 12. something like that maybe, or at least the ultimate just knock off 10 or 20 seconds because it's already pretty weak. So I don't know. I would like to see more Thresh, but realistically, there oftentimes are just better options out there. Okay, and then the final three here, and I don't want this to go over an hour, but we've got Sona, still going to be the queen of scaling, puts out very good poke early on with the combination of Scorch, Frostfang, and her Q. They have nerfed her Q scaling over time. It wasn't a lot. I don't think that's why she's sort of out of the meta right now. I just think that there are so many hard engaged champs, and she's just like a bullseye for something like Leona, Pyke, Nautilus. Just all of these champions just really want to get on her and blow her up. So if you can be safe on her, and if you have a team fight team, if you've got something like a Mundo and I don't know, just something else like maybe a Darius, just some kind of front line that can help protect and peel for you, then I think she can be very good. She still has some of the highest scaling in the game with her Q and her W. It just takes a while to get to that scaling, and games are usually over by then. You do not roam very well at all. You have like virtually no CC other than maybe a slow on your Song of Celerity. So she's one of the worst at roaming out there. Also, you have no escape, so if the jungler catches you out while you're roaming, you're going to get obliterated. So you're probably going to be a victim bot lane. The thing is, like, you can win 2v2s if you have someone that's aggressive, but if you've got an Ezreal or a tier Kai'Sa on your team early game, you're basically counting on your jungler and your mid lane to carry you in that game. That's kind of how I think of it, because otherwise, if they aren't totally dominating, then you're going to get camped and you're going to have a hard time. She does still have a pretty good win rate, I think, at like 50%, but this is some of her lowest win rate in years. Like, she's almost always 53 or 54% because she's so easy to play and she scales so well. So that just tells you just how hardcore it is right now with how hard you're getting camped bottom and just how prevalent some of these hard engaged champs are. So I'd probably rather, if you want that type of thing, I'd just rather play Janna. I think she just roams better, peels better, just is a little bit better against the dive and the assassins. Although she's still not amazing, she's a little bit better in Sona. Soraka is similar. Now, Soraka is kind of an odd duck. Like, you do have global pressure with your ult, which is nice. If you land a lot of Qs, you can put up, pretty reasonable poke in lane. But similar to Sona, if you get camped, you're going to die. You're pretty terrible at roaming. You have very, very limited CC. So, once again, if you have really good team fighting, if you have a lot of tanks, especially a Mundo, something like that, she can be good, but otherwise it's going to be problematic. Lux is another one that is okay, she at least can start fights with her Q. She's got her bind, she has really high damage on her ult. She still has her shield, which is pretty good. She's got nerfed quite a few times, but she can still do all right. I think her win rate is still pretty low. If you'll notice this too, look at how many supports are under 50% right now. It is so many. They're kind of popular supports. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10, and some of these don't even have a very high play rate. Like the Shaco, which we'll talk about here in a second, has less than a 1% play rate. So 9 champions are over 51%, which is not that much. And I mean, if you compare that to something like mid lane, I mean, look at how many champions here. We have to go down 2 pages before, that's how many champions over 51% in mid. And I know, people are going to say, but mid lane is just way more diverse. It's yeah, that's true, but that's also indicative of its power, is that it is so diverse. There's so many different champions, that can dominate in mid because the position itself is really, really strong because you can rotate and roam around the map. Junglers also are a little thinner in general. That's probably 10 also. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So, a case could be made for junglers not being as strong. I still think they're really strong, but anyways, let's get back on track here. So, Yuumi's just kind of weak in solo queue. If you're really high level or you have very specific partner or something, she can still be really good, but she's just too hard to execute, and she's been nerfed so much, I just wouldn't try her out that much. And then Morgana is, I guess we are going to go over an hour because I do want to talk about Shaco for just a second here. But Morgana seems like she'd be really good against these champs. It's like, okay, she can Black Shield like Nautilus, Blitz, Leona. Like, she's annoying for these champs. But keep in mind that, like, if people are playing these correctly, they're not going to be making plays around you. They're going to be mid lane most of the time, right? They're just going to ignore bot lane because you're not going to be able to put up that much pressure. Unless you flash Q, you're probably not putting up a lot of pressure bot lane as Morgana. And they're just going to roam and just, you know, kill middle or kill the enemy jungler or whatever. So the Black Shield can be good in theory, but there are ways to fake it out. There are ways to play around it, and they just don't have to ever fight near you most of the time. They can just run and make plays somewhere else on the map. So she's okay, but her scaling's limited. She has really long cooldowns on her abilities. You know, her W is basically worthless aside from proccing Frostfang in lane. And then her ult is very, very limited. It's super close range. It's a delayed stun. Her itemization's not that great, so I ban her in a lot of games just because she's annoying to go against if she does hit those 3-second binds, and Black Shield is annoying to get around, but realistically, she just doesn't put up the numbers. People just don't like playing against her because she's super frustrating. I mean, that's it. That's why she's the most banned champ, just because she's very anti-fun. But in general, yeah, I'd probably play something else. Although, you know, in theory, the meta is pretty good for her in the sense that she can block hard engage. She just doesn't roam as well. Okay, and then my spicy pick of the week here is going to be Shaco. Now, I tried him out in a couple of games with mixed results. One game was amazing. That was a normals game. But then in ranked, it was kind of rough. But part of that was because our mid lane and our jungler were just getting rolled over. But as you could see, up near the top, Shaco is the highest win rate right now. He is played less than 1% of the time. So it's probably a lot of like one tricks playing him. But they did change a couple of things about him that I think have made him a bit stronger. And, you know, I've only played 2 games at it, so, you know, take this with a grain of salt. But just kind of the stuff that I figured out about him that's really interesting are that those boxes are so nice for vision because they last at least 60 seconds, sometimes longer than that, depending on how much AP you have. And it gives you full vision over the entire area. So it's like the full, like, 750 vision or whatever. I don't know if it says it here. But that's very different from things like Ghost Poro, which is only like 400 vision. And like Teemo Traps are much less vision as well. So the detection radius is only 300. But it does give you the full vision over the area. So I don't remember the exact... I don't know if it says the range here, but it is the same range as a ward. Maybe I'm just zoning out. I need to go get something to eat. But yeah, it's a lot of vision. So it's really nice. It's like you get an extra ward, like a 1-minute ward that's on like a 10-second cooldown or something with your CDR. So I think that's pretty nice. It's pretty cheap. The fear is legit. I mean, 1.5 second fear. Now the startle does overlap with fear. Startle is just a stun. But that does overlap with the fear, so it's not 2 total seconds, it's 1.5 seconds. So that's pretty legit. It's hard to engage into him. You know, if you have like just boxes in the bush and boxes like on the corner near the wall where minions don't go, like your AD carry can farm near that stuff, and they really can't engage into you. If like the Leona or the Nautilus or whatever tries to engage into that, they're probably going to die. So that's, you know, that's kind of spooky. And then you have the vision, like I said before, and then, you know, just the surprise element. If someone walks up and gets startled and they don't know it's there, then it can do quite a bit of damage. Now, I will say I was a little bit disappointed in the single target damage. It feels like it's high. You know, it looks like it's high. Like if you have 100 AP, it's like 115 per shot. But realistically, against a lot of champions, it's not a ton. It's okay, but it's not quite as much as I was expecting. So that was a little disappointing. But Deceive is very nice. It's only 400 range, but it does give you invisibility. They did increase the amount of invisibility to 2.5 seconds. I think it used to only be 1.5. So that is very handy on this patch. Check out my patch notes where I talk about all the changes. The 2-shift poison is very nice too. I think they gave it an AP ratio. I don't believe it had one before. So they gave it an AP ratio now. It's pretty cheap. It's only 70 mana, and it does quite a bit of damage. I mean, 170, but if they're below 30%, then you do 50% extra damage. So that gets to be a lot. It's 255 base with a 0.9 ratio. Deals an additional... So I think if you hit them from behind with it, it does even... Is that what it's saying? It does even more damage? I don't know why it says backstab over there. Okay, 2 Shiv poison. Oh, that's the passive. Okay. So the active does this damage no matter what, and then the passive... Okay, that's when it's not... So this is going to be on cooldown most of the time in fights. But if you decide to just normally auto-attack people, then it does do a little bit of extra damage, which can be handy. And one of the nice things is hallucinate as well. It's only a 100-second cooldown, which is great. And whenever it dies, it instantly fears everybody. So if you can go into the middle of a... now, someone told me this trick in the patch notes video or whatever. If you put your clone very close to your leash range... And then if you have your clone out, you put it like near the end of your leash range, and then you Q into them, then the clone automatically appears where you were. And so that'll put it right in the middle of them, and they'll think that it's, half the time they'll think that it's you, because it just shows up out of nowhere. And so then they'll all start attacking it, and then you're still going to be invisible for that 2.5 seconds. You can pop up afterwards. But it has an instant fear mechanic now. For the 1 second, whenever it dies, and it does a ton of damage. So it does the 150 base, but then the boxes start hitting people, and there are 3 boxes just beating on people for a ton of extra damage. So it's pretty handy. You know, and he takes towers really quickly. If you have a cannon minion and you hallucinate and then just start beating on the tower, it can do a lot of damage that way. You can scout with this, of course. You can scout with your boxes really well. The 2 Shiv poison, I found myself a lot just being able to go into Q and then just rolling up and just shiving people. It was doing like 600 damage in the mid to late game. Just finishing a lot of people off that way. And then just like being able to pop it invisible behind somebody. And if you just like drop Jack in the box, do your hallucination, and then shiv them and just run them down. Like, there are very few people that can deal with that early on. So I think he has a lot of potential. I'd have to practice him a lot. I'm not saying everybody should play him, but I think there's potential there. And you just go Comet, Mana Flow, Absolute Focus, Scorch, Biscuits, Cosmic Insight. And then most of what I saw people doing, a lot of people went Ionian Boots. I would still rather have mobility just so you can roam around more. And then I would probably do Nomads, and then Hextech GLP is what a lot of people do as well, just to kind of slow them down, get a little bit of extra burst. But yeah, I mean, I think this could fit that paradigm where you just get Mobies, just run middle, you know, poof of smoke over the wall, show up behind somebody, drop your Jack in the box, hallucinate, shiv them, and they're probably going to die. So I think he could potentially have very good ganks, very good vision control with the boxes. It basically gives you double wards, so you can have like their entire jungle totally warded and boxed up. So I think he could potentially fit very, very well into this meta. Yeah, he's kind of stupid in lane. He doesn't do a lot. I mean, you can stop them from engaging on you with Jack in the box and just like chuck shivs at him, but he doesn't do a ton in lane. But if you do roam around, he can make those plays, and the damage is okay as he scales later, especially if you can get the hallucinate to blow up in the middle of a team fight and fear everybody. He can have some pretty good contributions. But anyways, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. Come check out the stream, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, pretty much every night. If you have any questions or comments or anything else that you think is really cool that I overlooked or that you want to add on to, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.